We officially have a new manager. The Mets have hired the now former Yankees bench coach Carlos Mendoza as their new manager. Mendoza is 43 years old, had a brief major league career from 1997 to 2000 with a few cups of coffee at the top level. He's been in the Yankees organization for over 15 years as a defense instructor, infield coach, and most recently the Yankees bench coach for the last 4 seasons. This hire came with some shock after the longtime frontrunner for the Mets job in Craig Counsell spurred the Mets and the Brewers to join the Cubs, signing a record-setting deal. With speculation about Counsell's desire to manage the Mets aside from money, that seemed to be true. Bob Nightingale reported that Counsell, quote-unquote, never ever was going to take the Mets job, with speculation that he'd rather sit out this season than move 1,000 miles away from Wisconsin. Counsell's historic 5-year, $40 million deal was reportedly created by the Mets' lucrative offer to push the Cubs up to their offer to sign the free agent manager, who is from Indiana and grew up as a fan. But nonetheless, the Mets have viewed Mendoza as a very strong candidate from the beginning, becoming the first major hire of David Stern's tenure with the Mets organization.
When we did the last podcast, we talked about the fact that it was really going to be down to Counsell and Mendoza. I mean, that was the sense that you got from everything that you read. And just, it made the most sense, honestly, with the options that were available. The other guy that I'm kind of surprised didn't even get it. I don't know if he even got an interview for the Mets, was Joe Espada, who did end up, going to the Astros to be their manager. Makes a ton of sense there, has experienced the organization, so I'm not surprised. But I think that it makes a lot of, Craig Counsell really just kind of fooled everybody. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We talk so much about, Mets, Brewers, maybe the Guardians, they have an opening. But for him to go to a team that at the time did not have a manager opening, that caught everybody by surprise. And not because David Ross had done a great job and had, a ton of job security, but just the fact that it really just came out of nowhere, division rival and things like that. And you can ultimately tell that we talked about it before, but we've seen this happen a lot with the Mets with players, putting the Mets name in the bidding, having the Mets attached to you to drive up your price. We've seen it countless times in the Steve Cohen regime with players. This is the first time we saw it with a manager. So I do find that very interesting. The Cubs out of nowhere give you this record deal. No one would have predicted that. I mean, it really just caught everybody by surprise. And I think it makes the most sense that Counsell took the most money. And most importantly, it seems like staying close to home was probably his top priority. And he was able to still kind of do that by moving to Chicago. So he was able to accomplish the two things you want to do. You want to get the most money, and you want to be pretty close to the place you want to be. And he was able to do both of those. So for the Mets, for them to pivot to Mendoza, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, where else were they really going to go once something like that happened? And we said it before, but I'm good with the Mendoza hire. I think that right now, especially in this current age of baseball, with the kind of pedigree that David Stern seems to have, the kind of respect he seems to have, that David Stearns is going to be the guy calling the shots when it comes down to a lot of the big things, who's playing and things like that. Most of that's going to come down to David Stearns in the front office. So the manager is not going to have the same effect that he would 20, 30 years ago. So that's one of the big things to keep in mind. So Stearns is the guy that's really running this. Mendoza, I'm sure he'll do fine as, what do you want to call it, the mouthpiece or the public spokesperson for the Mets on a day in, day out basis. I'm sure he'll do fine with that. You've heard a lot of good things about him, though. I mean, from everywhere you read, anyone who talks about him, all very good things about Carlos Mendoza, just about the way he interacts with players, the way he goes about the game. He has some superstitions. We'll see about that. He's throwing sunflower seeds onto the field. But all in all, it's so hard to really overreact when it is a rookie manager. But I think, of the rookie managers that we've seen with the Mets, I'm going to give him a shot. Again, like I said, I wanted to aim young, and I wanted to see the Mets try to do something a little different here. And I think Mendoza, it's an okay hire. I mean, it's not a slam dunk, but then again, the slam dunk candidate wasn't really out there. You know what I mean? So I think that, based off of the situation, the Mets did probably the best thing that they could do, because Counsell was not going to come.
Surprised to the team, but obviously there was a feeling that we saw those reports from the Milwaukee Times being like, oh, they're going to, if the offers were close, he would end up going to Milwaukee. Yeah, we didn't see the Cubs just coming out of nowhere and just RKOing the field, but hey, good for him. He got what he wanted. He got the money. He got to stay close, semi-close, 90 miles to his home. Good, have fun. Good for you. You set the market, whatever. Like I've said, I've continued to say on the pod, I never really cared if it was Counsell, if it was Mendoza, Beltran, Carlos Pena, whoever. it would have been behind the bench because I trust David Stearns to pick his guy. And I think I was hearing something. Obviously, all the talking heads were pissed off as always, but there was someone that brought up a good point: is if this truly is a house money year and there is not going to be the championship expectations, this would be a year to bring in a first-time manager. Say, hey, try to compete, but like this isn't. You have to get to the World Series. You have to get back to the playoffs. You want to be competitive. You want this team to be competitive, but it gives him kind of a developmental year, you could call it. And with this house money, of seeing what this team's going to be, and say kind of like I think you said it about Rojas that they hired him at the wrong time. I think you said it on one of the pods a couple years ago that like this is developmental. Like this maybe is the year to like, hey, it's like again you're playing with house money, so it's like what. If he has a good year, hey, let's say he skips Schumacher. Let's say he comes in first year, rookie manager, and has a great year and wins 85 games, gets to the playoffs. As a first year, it gives him the ability to say, hey, you don't have to be a championship team right away. You can learn New York, even though he's been obviously a bench coach with Boone, but it gives you the ability to say, hey, do it as a manager with not obviously expectations, but again, not what this team was, 2 years ago with a full studded all-star. You have to get to the World Series. It allows him to kind of like get used to it while trying to be competitive as well. So if this is the guy that David Stearns is banking on, we complained and cried for years to get David Stearns. I'm not just going to turn on him because, he hired a guy nobody's heard of. If it was Carlos Beltran, I bet you the crowd would be like, oh, that's pretty good. It's just the wrong Carlos. Sorry. You got the guy that nobody knows instead of the freaking should-be Hall of Famer. Oh, bad, whoop-de-doo. They have the same amount of experience. So, again, I made it clear throughout the whole process, I didn't really give a shit who the manager was. So I'm going to trust David Stearns. If this is the guy he thinks he can be the best symbiotic with him, hope this is our Venom and we can go win a couple of World Series. I'm fine.
I'm always very critical about pretty much every move that the Mets make. I mean, I'm always going to say if I like it or I don't like it. And I'm going to tell you right now, and it's hard to go out on a limb with the Mets manager position. I think the Mets completely nailed it here. I think the Mets nailed it with this hire. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, it is a first-time manager. We don't know what he's going to be. But I've said this before, it's not a rookie manager. First-time managers and rookie managers are two different things. Mickey Callaway was a pitching coach, never had any leadership experience. Rojas was a quality control coach dealing with analytics and bench coaches in the minor leagues. The fact that the Mets, they went out of their way and said, okay, we like Carlos Mendoza. He has been a bench coach for multiple years now. He's been in the public eye of New York media, which is so goddamn important because we have seen so many Mets managers specifically say so many stupid things and get thrown completely out of context. Dry humping guys from Mickey Callaway, Luis Rojas just saying that he didn't even going on during the clubhouse, basically just admitting that to the media. A lot of Mets managers say a lot of stupid things. And this guy seems to be very trained with the New York media. From what I've seen, he's very outspoken. He's very well respected within the clubhouse. And that's all I really care about. To be honest, that's all I really care about. I don't know how he's going to manage the bullpen. I don't know how he's going to manage the lineup. I don't know how he's going to manage anything, how the presence is going to be in the clubhouse. Have absolutely no idea what he's going to do. But again, like we have said before, with Carlos Mendoza, yes, there's a first-time manager thing, but let's just be real for a second. Give me a good roster and then we'll win. A good roster covers a lot of sins, as we have talked about before. A good, deep roster. Brian Snitker, not the greatest manager, but the Braves have a really good team. Dave Roberts, not a great manager, but the Dodgers have a really good team. So there is tons of first-time managers or not very good managers that get covered up and bailed out by a lot of talent, the high-end talent. Out of all of the candidates that we were talking about, this was the only one with actual New York experience, which is so much more important than I think a lot of people think it does, especially with how the whole manager situation is now, of how they've just been puppets for the owners. We just need to hear them talk. We need to see how they present themselves, if they're well respected in the clubhouse. And that's what we have seen from a lot of players. We've seen Harrison Bader go out and say that. It looks like he wants the fourth outfielder job next year for some reason. We even saw well-respected postseason heroes such as Reggie Jackson give his stamp of approval. I don't know how it's going to be, but I think that this is somebody who has been developed into this role, and he should have gotten a managerial spot in the last few years. And I think that they did a really, really good job with this. As for Consul, I'm fine with it. I don't care, to be honest. I did not see Consul as this big gem. I just saw him as a good cog in the wheelbarrow of David Stearns. They've had a relationship for a long time. It would have been work to be, very adaptable and be in sync with the front office. That's about it. As we've all seen before so far from David Stearns, he has said that I'm not just going to take things from other organizations. We're also going to bring in our own type of methods and our own type of things and have like an own New York stamp on things. Well, a New York stamp, bringing from a New York guy who's been in here for over 15 years, I think this was a fantastic hire, in my opinion. And I don't know how well the team is going to be. Again, the manager does not matter. I need the front office to be good. Just because nobody's really heard of this guy as compared to Craig Consul. Overall, I think that the name of Craig Consul is a lot bigger than his value of what he would have brought to the Mets. And what we're hearing was he obviously didn't want to be with the Mets. He just wanted the money from the Cubs. I think we all know that from years and years and years of New York sports, we want guys who want to be here. And it looks like Carlos Mendoza wants to be here.